What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. Alright, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. We have a lot of stuff going on as of right now. We have Invest 94L that is currently trying to organize and develop out here in the main development region. However, it's having a more difficult time doing that today than it was yesterday. If you go ahead and show you what's going on with 94L right here. Here's the situation we have going on. A broad area of low pressure located several hundred miles southwest of the Cabo Verde Islands is producing disorganized showers and thunderstorms. While this system has become less organized since yesterday, the overall environmental conditions are forecast to become more conducive for development, and a tropical depression or storm is likely to form within the next few days while the system moves westward to west-northwestward across the central and western tropical Atlantic. Additional information of the system, including gale warnings, can be found in the high seas forecast issued by the National Weather Service. Formation chance in the next 48 hours has gone down slightly. It was at 70% when we talked about it yesterday. Now it's down to 60% at the time I am filming this video. And the formation chance in the next 7 days is at 90%. Once again, still very high chance of development. However, it's just not doing it right now. However, this actually makes me more concerned, as a matter of fact, because I actually want to go ahead and pull this tweet up right here. As a matter of fact, this is from one of my tropical team members in Storms United. This is from Tristan. What people sadly don't realize is the longer Invest 94L is weak, the bigger the threat the bigger the threat of a hit to the Caribbean, due to stronger storms loving to curve north. And unlike other systems, there's only one system to do wind shear left. This may be trouble. So that's the situation that I have going on right here. And the reason I'm concerned about that is basically why Tristan just summed it up right there. And the way I see this is basically how these systems work is, the quicker they intensify out in the main development region, the higher the chance the system has of curving to the north, mainly because of a potential trough or something like that can build up and kind of overpower the steering currents from the high pressure system that's over there, and then just push that further to the north. But when it comes to stuff like just some stuff as weak as Invest or even tropical depressions over here, like I'm seeing with Tropical Depression Sean, those things ideally move more and more to the west as it's more affected by the steering currents as we continue to take a look at them. So we have the new track models and intensity models in for Invest 94L. We'll start with the track models and then get to the intensity models. Track models have been very interesting, to say the very least. Some of them have it curving more to the north as they're expected to intensify earlier. Others have it continuing to push further to the west. Once again, right now, 120 hours out, it's too early to tell if this thing will impact land or not, according to these models. However, according to the operational models you're about to see, as well as a bunch of other modeling, this could be a major threat to at least the Antilles, and if not that, and this thing remains weaker than anticipated, then a potential threat to the Caribbean is not out of the question. And now for the intensity models, majority of them have this remaining around tropical storm strength as it starts to approach the Antilles. That to me seems a bit more realistic going into this, primarily because the environment's not the best right now, and it is showing signs of disorganization too, so we have to keep that in mind. However, some have it getting up to a hurricane strength in the next 3 to 5 days. If the H-Wharf, after becoming a tropical storm, just explosively intensifying to Category 4 strength, and H-Mon rapidly intensifies to Category 4 strength. So that's definitely two things that we need to pay attention to as time continues to go on, ladies and gentlemen. And as we continue to get into this active weather period, be sure to check out my friends over at Prestige Weather Consulting. They do individual one-on-one consulting catered to your local area. For more information on them, be sure to check them out in the link in the description down below, and be sure to use the code PREDICTOR for 50% off your first month. They've been helping me with these videos, and I really want to appreciate it. I wanted to give them a quick shout out as time continues to go on. But with that being said, folks, we're going to go ahead and show you some of these operational models I was talking to you about, and then kind of talk about the conditions that are going on. with what's happening. Actually, let's go ahead and show you some of the conditions to give you a better understanding of what we're looking at and why this may end up being a potential threat to those of you who are tuning in from the Caribbean. So here's what we have with the global sea temperatures as of right now. Global sea temperatures 30 plus degrees Celsius from pretty much this part in the main development region all the way through the Caribbean Sea and into parts of the Gulf of Mexico. Gulf of Mexico has been cooling off due to it being in the fall, particularly around here in the United States, but we'll have to see how that ends up impacting stuff as time continues to go down on the road. And then, as you can see with what we're watching here, very piping hot water still in the Caribbean Sea. Like, there's really no sign that these waters are cooling off that easily very soon, and they've remained very consistent over the last several months or so. So that's the global sea temperatures. Ocean heat content, we're about to go ahead and pull that up. OHC, interesting, very interesting situation what we have pulled up right here. The OHC across the western half of the MDR, well over 75 to 100 knots. In fact, cracking 150 in a few areas as you approach the Caribbean Sea. And then as you enter the Caribbean, you see areas of 150, 175, and a lot of 200 OHC across this area right here off the coast of Cuba, from pretty much there to off the coast of Honduras to the Yucatan Peninsula, that whole triangle-ish area right there. Very piping hot waters, very deep waters over there as well. So the OHC has once again been record-breaking. Compare that to 2020, we weren't even close to any of this stuff over here. So that's what I wanted to really take a look at. And lastly, the wind shear. I feel like the reason that 94L is having a little bit of trouble in organizing is because it's still being impacted by a little bit of wind shear that's expected to weaken in the next day or so. And then we'll have to see how the dry air ends up playing out with this system, because if this system stays weak enough, like we said previously, it'll have a much higher chance of it moving through the Caribbean Sea. As we continue to see, we're seeing better and better conditions across much of the Caribbean. So if that happens and it enters those warm waters, yeah, it's not looking good when it comes to that regard. So that's all stuff we need to keep a very close eye out on for as time continues to go on. Now we're going to go ahead and show you some models that we have pulled up right here. Here's the European model to start with. European's been a very interesting forecast to go along. Europeans kind of having a hard time organizing this and having this develop until it gets closer to the Lesser Antilles now, because previously we were looking at maybe a hurricane as this was approaching the Antilles, but now we're looking at around tropical depression, a tropical storm strength as this thing moves through the Antilles right there. I'm going to be honest with you guys, I don't particularly like this path right here, primarily because of how much weaker it is compared to where we were yesterday. So my best guess here is that it's gonna continue moving to the west if it's gonna be that weak, because steering currents and troughs don't have as much of an effect on these kinds of systems, especially if they're very weak. Very weak compared to the other stuff we saw. We saw Lee turn more to the north because it was impacted by a trough. We saw Felipe turn more to the north after impacting a lot of the Lesser Antilles with a lot of flooding in all those areas right there before turning to the north right there. So that's definitely something to pay attention to as time continues to progress. That's the European model at this current time. Next model we're going to go ahead and show you is the GFS. GFS has been rather unrealistic over the last few runs, so we need to take this with a grain of salt. And as we can see with the GFS, it's a lot more conservative than it was before, but even still, the GFS is having this thing basically turning up to the north right there and then turning more to the west, which there's no other model that's forecasting this kind of trajectory, and there's no other model that's really anticipating a trajectory like this at all. So I would take this with a massive grain of salt. But if the GFS ends up being correct, it impacts the Antilles, Puerto Rico, Hispaniola before turning further out to the north and then just moving out to the east for some reason. I don't know. But it's just, I don't trust it, to be honest. It doesn't look like a track that would really be like that unless the steering currents just completely collapse right then and there. So just moral of the story, don't believe everything you see. If you see the GFS and you see all these weird trajectories like, oh, the GFS is calling for this, Patrick, you might want to watch out for that. Don't believe it. just always vet your sources before you take it at face value. So that's the GFS model we have. The CMC has been very interesting. Once again, here's the CMC. CMC is having this thing develop potentially into a hurricane a lot earlier than what the Europeans forecasting. Category 1 impacts potentially in the Leeward Islands before turning out to sea, while strengthening a little bit to Category 2 strength, and then just moving out to sea from then on out. So that's what we have going on with the CMC, still calling for a hurricane to impact the Antilles. Next model we're showing you is the NavGem. NavGem's been very interesting to say at the very least. NavGem has been having this thing pushing further and further to the west before strengthening into a hurricane as it impacts the Leeward Islands. Category 1 strength is anticipated according to the NavGem before turning out to sea at this current point. So that's what we have going on with the NavGem. Last model we're going to show you is the Icon, and the Icon's been very interesting to say at the very least. Icon is having this thing organizing a lot earlier than anticipated, and then pushing further to the west and potentially impacting the Lesser Antilles as a tropical storm at this current point. I'm not exactly sure what data they're seeing that the other models aren't at that current point. I know the Europeans forecasting a little bit of a stronger system than that, but that's definitely something we will need to monitor as time continues to go on. Now we're going to go ahead and quickly pull up a couple of hurricane models. First one we're showing you is the HMON, because the HMON has been very, how do I put it, very just aggressive and ramped up, as we've seen with previous model runs. So here's what we have with the HMON. HMON is starting development rather slow, and then starting about 45 hours out, we're starting to see some potential tropical storm conditions, and then it starts to organize further. It becomes a hurricane. Pressure continues to decrease and plummet as this thing gets stronger. Reaches major hurricane strength. It becomes a Category 3 as it continues to approach the Lesser Antilles. It's actually moving up a bit further to the south, actually, than what we were anticipating at the 6Z at this current point. That's Barbados over there. So we'll have to see how this whole thing plays out. Last model we're showing you is the H-Wharf right here. The H-Wharf has been really playing this out quite aggressively, similar to the H-Mon right here. So the H-Wharf is having this thing starting to organize and then gradually develop. I'd see the development according to the H-Wharf. It's not going to be happening until like 3 days out or so. So that's going to be interesting how this whole thing plays out. Especially if it stays weak that long, where this thing continues to push further to the west as time continues to go on. Eventually it gets down to a 975 millibar Category 2 hurricane, but even still, at this point, it's further to the south. Like the H-Mon was at around 16 degrees north. The H-Wharf's at 14 degrees north. So that's a big discrepancy right there. That could mean this thing pushing further into the Caribbean Sea. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and close the video out right here. We'll keep you updated here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. Be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you are new. It helps us out, helps us make more videos like these. The goal of this channel is to get more people engaged with weather. But with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.